everyone, hope you're having a great day. Today, we're going to explore what happens when a woman judged for her background is asked to stand beside a CEO at a $1.2 billion inauguration, facing whispers, doubt, and pressure without stepping back. It's a story about quiet strength, dignity, and proving your worth through presence, not words. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes. The morning starts earlier than usual. The sky is still soft and pale when CEO Quang steps into his temporary site office, coffee untouched, eyes fixed on the documents spread out across the table. Two projects sit side by side. One is the home he's building for Linda, unfinished, personal, full of quiet meaning. The other is a massive construction project valued at $1.2 billion, scheduled for its official inauguration today. Two worlds, two responsibilities, and both demand his full attention. Quang takes a slow breath. The pressure is real, but it's familiar. What's different today isn't the scale of the project, it's the decision he's already made. When Linda walks in, she can feel it immediately. There's a different energy in the room, not tense, but focused, purposeful. Quang looks up and tells her calmly that he wants her to come with him to the inauguration ceremony, not as an observer, not to stand in the background, but to stand beside him. Linda freezes for a second. A project worth $1.2 billion isn't just another site visit. It's filled with executives, partners, engineers, workers, media, people who measure worth by resumes, backgrounds, and appearances. Linda knows exactly how she might be seen. She hesitates, wondering if her presence could invite unnecessary judgment or distract from Quang's achievement. Quang notices the doubt immediately. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't over-explain. He simply says, "You're not going with me to prove anything. You're going because you belong there." That sentence stays with her. On the drive to the site, the city slowly gives way to the vast outline of the completed project. Steel, concrete, glass. Everything looks solid, expensive, intimidating. Linda watches the road through the window, her thoughts racing. She's proud of Quang, deeply so, but she can't ignore the quiet anxiety building in her chest. To ease the tension, Quang starts talking about the project. He explains the early challenges, the delays, the moments when things almost fell apart. He talks not like a CEO giving a report, but like someone sharing a story. Linda listens closely. The more he speaks, the more she realizes he isn't trying to impress her. He's inviting her into his world. As they arrive, the scale of the ceremony becomes clear. Banners, stages, cameras, people everywhere. The moment they step out of the car, attention shifts. Some faces light up with polite smiles. Others pause, scanning Linda with quiet curiosity. A few whispers begin almost immediately. Linda feels it. She straightens her posture, reminding herself to breathe. Quang walks beside her at a steady pace, never once letting go of her presence, never stepping ahead as if to leave her behind. Inside the site, greetings come quickly. Handshakes, nods, formal words. Linda responds calmly, politely, even when she senses hesitation in some people's eyes. Not everyone knows who she is, and not everyone approves of her standing there. From the side of the site where groups of workers gather, the tone is different. Linda catches fragments of conversation, low voices, glances that linger a little too long. She doesn't hear clear words yet, but she understands the feeling behind them. Judgment, assumption, comparison. The ceremony hasn't even started, and the test already has. Quang is called aside briefly to review the schedule with the organizers. For a moment, Linda stands alone. She feels exposed, but she doesn't retreat. Instead, She observes the project, the people, the effort behind everything built here. She reminds herself that buildings don't care about where you come from, only whether you're strong enough to stand. Quang returns and quietly asks if she's okay. Linda nods. She doesn't lie. She simply says, "I'm here." That's enough. As the inauguration time approaches, the crowd gathers near the stage. Cameras are adjusted. Music plays softly in the background. The atmosphere turns formal, almost ceremonial. Quang prepares to give his speech, reviewing a few notes on his phone. Linda stands slightly behind him, hands clasped, heart steadying itself. Before stepping on stage, Quang turns to her and says something only she can hear. "No matter what you hear today, remember this. Nothing we built came from nothing." The words ground her. They step onto the stage together. The crowd quiets. Quang begins speaking, clear, confident, but not distant. He talks about teamwork, responsibility, and the people who carried the project through its hardest moments. He acknowledges the workers, the engineers, the partners. His tone isn't arrogant, it's earned. Then, unexpectedly, he gestures toward Linda. He introduces her, not with a title, not with an explanation, just her name and her place beside him. The reaction is immediate. Some faces show surprise, some approval, others stiffen. From the side, the whispers grow sharper. This time, Linda hears enough to understand the meaning behind them. Comments about her background, about whether she deserves to be there, about appearances and assumptions made too easily. For a split second, the old fear surfaces, but it doesn't stay. Linda lifts her head. She doesn't respond to the noise. She doesn't look away. She simply stands, calm, composed, unshaken. Her silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. Quang continues speaking, his voice steady, unbroken. He doesn't acknowledge the whispers. He doesn't need to. His presence says enough. As the speech ends, the moment everyone has been waiting for approaches. The ribbon-cutting ceremony. The symbolic act that marks the project's official completion. Quang reaches for the ribbon, then pauses, turning once more to Linda. He places the scissors in her hand alongside his. The cameras flash. The crowd holds its breath. And Linda realizes something important in that moment. This isn't about approval. It's about standing your ground when others doubt you. They cut the ribbon together. Applause erupts, loud enough to drown out the whispers. The project is officially inaugurated. A milestone achieved. A message delivered without a single argument spoken. As the ceremony transitions into informal conversations, something shifts. A few partners approach Linda directly, complimenting her composure, asking questions, offering respect not because of where she came from, but because of how she carried herself. From a distance, Quang watches quietly. He doesn't interfere. He doesn't correct anyone. He knows Linda doesn't need saving. As the sun begins to lower, the crowd slowly disperses. The noise fades. What remains is the quiet understanding between two people who chose to stand together despite the weight of judgment. Walking away from the sight, Linda exhales deeply for the first time all day. Quang glances at her and smiles. Not triumphant, not relieved, just certain. They don't talk much on the way back. They don't need to. Because today wasn't just about inaugurating a $1.2 billion project. It was about cutting through assumptions, one moment at a time. The drive back from the inauguration is quieter than the ride there. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the road, and the city lights begin to flicker on one by one. Linda rests her head lightly against the window, watching the world pass by, replaying the day in her mind. Only now does she realize how tense she had been holding herself together. Quang doesn't rush to speak. He knows silence can be a kind of comfort. When he finally does break it, his voice is calm, almost casual. "You handled today better than most people would." Linda lets out a small breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "I didn't think I could," she admits. "For a moment, I almost felt like I didn't belong there at all." Quang keeps his eyes on the road. "That feeling never really goes away," he says. "No matter how high you stand, someone will always try to measure you by the wrong things." They arrive back at the quieter construction site, the house they're building together. Compared to the massive project they just left, this place feels smaller, rougher, unfinished. But it feels real, personal. The sound of the wind moving through unfinished frames feels grounding after the noise of the ceremony. Linda steps out of the car and looks around. The walls aren't complete yet. The roof is still a work in progress. Dust covers the ground. And yet, this place feels more hers than any stage ever could. Quang walks beside her, pointing out what still needs to be done. He talks about timelines, materials, small design changes he's been thinking about. Linda listens, smiling softly. She realizes something important. Today showed her two sides of his world, power and vulnerability, and he trusted her with both. They sit down on a stack of wooden beams, sharing bottled water as the sky turns orange and purple. Linda finally speaks what's been weighing on her. "When I heard them talking, part of me wanted to disappear." Quang doesn't interrupt. "But another part of me," she continues, "felt strangely calm. Like, if I ran away now, I'd be agreeing with them." Quang nods slowly. "That's the part of you that's growing," he says. "And that's exactly why I wanted you there today." Linda turns to look at him, surprised. He explains that bringing her to the inauguration was never about making a statement to others. It was about making one to themselves, about choosing not to hide when things get uncomfortable. As night falls, the site grows quiet. The world feels smaller again, safer. Linda stands up and walks a few steps forward, imagining the finished house, light coming through the windows, quiet mornings, shared routines. A future not defined by anyone else's opinions. Behind her, Quang watches silently, feeling a sense of certainty he hasn't felt in a long time. Today, they face judgment without confrontation, pressure without collapse, and they walked away stronger for it. The episode closes with the two of them standing side by side at the unfinished home, not saying much, but understanding everything. Not every victory needs applause. Some are earned simply by staying where you are and refusing to step back.
Linda theo bà và cậu cháu ra nương mía. Dưới nắng sớm, bà vừa chặt mía vừa kể chuyện ngày xưa. Dậy chặt 3 hoặc 4 khúc cho đẹp để bán được giá. Đồng mía cao dần, 45 đồng trở thành hy vọng cho phiên chợ. Một cây mía đổ bất ngờ khiến cả nhóm kêu, rồi cười xòa vì kịp đỡ nhau. Chiều xuống, Linda buồn bã vì con rúi của mình đã biến mất. Nghi có kẻ trộm rình quanh nhà. CEO Quang ghé đến lắng nghe và trấn an và tự sửa chiếc camera cũ trong kho, kéo dây lắp trước sân nhà để bảo vệ cô. Đêm đến, Linda nấu cơm nếp cẩm mời anh ở lại ăn. Hai người trò chuyện lòng ấm lại. Quang kể áp lực công ty, camera nháy sáng, bóng lạ thoáng qua, và không biết Linda có sống sót qua được đêm nay không. Mọi người nếu thấy video hay, hãy cho mình một like, một subscribe. Cảm ơn mọi người nhé.